Good morning, my name is Svet Voloshin, and this is MegaPrint. MegaPrint Corporation supplies large form of banners for venues. They've been in business for 50 years, and they acquire multiple companies along the way. And so they are located in the US, Canada, Spain, and Ireland. The customers are B2B, venues, stadiums, convention centers, schools, theaters. The growth is fairly rapid, so we're going to assume 15% here. Market, as mentioned, is global. Challenges is that their diverse sales processes right now and technologies are inhibiting growth. They're trying to unify that, and the goal is to transform digitally, and they're looking for this project to address their scaling issues. So the org strategy on this one is going to be single org due to absence of data residency requirement, ability to stay within limits, as well as unification of processes that they desire. For mobile, we'll use Salesforce Mobile app for internal users and mobile publisher for external. Document strategy will be Formstack documents for DocGen and e-signature. The files, we're going to keep them mostly on platform, but in some cases with CAD, that'll be off platform on the network shared drive. And multi-currency will be enabled using the data exchange rates. Now, the multi-language will also be enabled. Design principles, principle of least privilege by default build, and no budget constraints on this one. So the actors that we have here, so we've got the fairly sales-heavy situation where the partner sales representatives and event sales representatives get the sales cloud because they need access to opportunities. Print technicians and management, they will need service cloud because they also do play that supportive role. So they also will need omni-channel, service cloud, voice, and chat. For the venue admin user and venue operators, we'd like to give them partner community because they also need access to these opportunities, delegated admin, as well as forecasts. For customers, we'll give them CC because they're going to be needing to own records and cases. And this is the file volume is 24 terabytes, so we're mostly keeping that on platform due to the volume of the users. And authorization, authentication is going to be using their AD, Active Directory, and we're introducing Okta as well. For venue operators, we'll give them username and password. There's no other requirement there. And for customers, social sign-on. So the role hierarchy is fairly regionalized. So we've got US, Canada, and other countries. And here we're going to be breaking it down to cities and various locations as well. So please ignore this right here. That's meant to be a separate branch. So for the print technician management are going to be separated by location, and partner sales are going to be owning the venue operators right here. So same for other countries such as Canada, and customers are not in hierarchy. So let me move on to lucid chart for system landscape. So over here, we've got an interesting situation where we've got 3 Salesforce instances that will be retiring. And because they've grown by acquisition, and at this point, they would like to unify. Same for Microsoft Dynamics. And the strategy, again, is a single org. Some of the marketing activity will be done in Marketing Cloud. So MC Connect is what will connect that to Salesforce instance. So this should be actually a partner community, as mentioned in the licenses. And we're going to be retaining the website. The website is just going to be integrated using Formstack forms. So we'll have to introduce Okta in order to retain the Active Directory because they do have some issues with provisioning, deprovisioning of users. And so we'll be using Okta for that, connecting to Salesforce using SAML 2.0 and Skim 2.0 for provision, deprovision. Because of the number of systems and the orchestration that's required for smooth operations, so we'll be introducing the ESB and the ETL. Over here, retaining the computer-aided design CAD system right over here, as well as the network drive. We'll be retaining the SAP systems as well because they're used for ORS and ERP. And so all of those will be orchestrated by an ESB. So network drive, data warehouse was something else that I would like to introduce. So that should be new kind of thing over here. So whenever possible, I'm assuming that there's going to be a REST-based connection. Both ETL and ESB are going to be secured using MTLS and Java token flow. ESB will also serve as a node data layer using, so for Salesforce Connect, and Bulk API 2.0 will be used to load files and records in bulk using the ETL. And so this connection will exist with Salesforce, legacy Salesforce instances as well. All right, now for the data model over here, it's a mixture of custom, external, and standard objects. So over here we have the lead conversion normal sales process. This is a B2B situation, so no person account. So we've got the account contact opportunity, line items, product catalog with price book entry and price book, of course. And then after the opportunities are created, then we'll create orders automatically and replicate the line items from opportunity line items to the order. And following that, work order will be issued so that the fulfillment could begin. So this over here, this is the service area. So I omitted entitlements, milestones, milestone actions, and so on. But case is definitely an important object. Here, I considered using a case team, but instead the client team will be used for tracking and historical reference. So that's a custom object over here. Invoice to represent invoices that are going to be actually issued using the ERP. But now for the core for business processes, of course, we've got the venues, events that take place at the venues. They're associated to various customers. Print locations are the print locations that is MegaPrint, proprietary print locations. But of course, they serve various venues. And of course, we've got the banner placeholders as well as support objects such as image mapping. Now, print job is going to track the jobs themselves, and this is the product tracking over here. The external objects are going to be basically virtualizing the data for the payment processing system, which I assume is connected already to the ERP as mentioned. And here we've got the external folders. This is similar to a SharePoint type functionality. I would like to then come back to the data migration as well as the DevOps. But at this point, I would like to move on to the actual project overview and general pain points. So currently, they have this Active Directory, right? But the frustration is because the lengthy error-prone process. So at this point, the risk there is loss of productivity. And so we're introducing Okta over here to mitigate that. And so that will use the existing Active Directory as the user store, but Okta will be used to orchestrate SSO and provision using SCIM 2.0. MegaPrint also had issues with terminated users retaining access. So the risk here is unauthorized access and info leakage. So create the centralized deprovisioning process again using Okta that should take care of things. So they also have some old developers basically that are not really familiar with DevOps processes. So in this case, the risk is timeline. There's incomplete deployments and quality as well. So we'll be orchestrating that using Copado, and we'll create a solid DevOps strategy with a solid pipeline as described over here with test-driven development. Okay, moving on to the venue onboarding process. So the partner representatives call on venue prospects to negotiate the preferred relationships. So that will be used. We'll be using the sales cloud processes over here. So creating accounts, contacts, and opportunities. Negotiations will be tracked on opportunities and opportunity line items. They need to be able to first submit referrals. So the venue operators would be the partner community users. And so they'll be logging into partner communities, and submitting leads and creating leads, which will be then transferred to the partner sales representatives, rather. And so then when onboarding the new venue, so partner sales representatives are going to be owning these relationships with the venue operators. And so they'll be designating a delegated admin. So they have a partner community license. So the delegated admin will be able to then have up to 20 users that they can themselves administer, and the limit can be increased by the partner sales representatives. So they'll be basically assigning more licenses to them, but we'll be tracking that license count on the account. The PSR will assign the new venue a primary print location. So they'll need a visual aid for that. So we'll use a distance formula to calculate the print location from the actual venue. And an LWC will show a map with print locations based on max distance that they would specify on in the code of the LWC controller. Now, the print technicians will create venue renderings during the process. So there's 7,000 of them, including management. So I've shown that in my actors and licenses. Over here, they have the Service Cloud license. The onboarding process will facilitate assignment. So this is basically where we will be creating a work order, and we'll be assigning the work order using omnichannel flow based on capacity for these technicians. And so these will be the technicians that are assigned to a particular print location. So the omnichannel flow will be able to loop through the users whose print location is specified on their user record. The venue renderings are created in the custom CAD system, which is something where they do all the major work with the rendering blueprints of venues and imagery placeholders. Seem to be having issues here with the Lucidchart, so I cannot actually show the system landscape. So let me do that over here. So here's the CAD system. CAD system actually has REST API, so that's something that we'll be able to leverage as well. And I'll talk about that during the integrations. And so the technician then will be finalizing the sizing options and pricing using the making them available for sale. So that would be where the product catalog comes in. So product price book and price book entry will be feeding into opportunity line items, which will be replicated to order line items. Now the partner sales representatives and other accounts they can see the partner accounts, but only edit their own. So the OWD for this will be public read only. In fact, now I think about it, the PSRs can actually get the view all permission using a permission set, but then they'll be, of course, able to edit their own records. All right, at this point, the website will be showing the examples of renderings for all the various venues with options to download more information. So that would be wonderful, but at this point, we'll need to give them an opportunity to submit their information and also submit various files along with that. So there'll be a multi-screen type of embedded form using Formstack forms. We considered Web2Lead, but they do have over 1,000 inquiries per day. And so that exceeds the limit of Web2Lead. And so basically, the risk is lack of follow-up on those emails. So instead, they'll be getting leads, and the leads will be distributed using omnichannel with queue-based routing. And this way, they will not miss, less likely to miss those leads. So Formstack will also take care of collecting the uploaded documents and attach them to the lead record. Now, the event sales representatives are members of the global field sales team. So they do fall right here under the regional execs, which I assume are going to be there. And so they'll be picking up leads from the geo queues using lead assignment rules, as mentioned. We got the 600,000 customers, over 250,000 accounts. So they average about 2 events annually. So if we take a look at the LTV over here, so it tells us that's 20,000 over here, and we've got 500,000 events. So that's quite a few, but still not in LTV territory. Now, the customer inquiries from the websites and referrals from vendors needs to be assigned to the event sales representatives who worked on these events. Otherwise, they'll need to be assigned to venue geography using the country segregated by country. In this case, we'll be using an omnichannel flow to check on account ownership and see if somebody already owns the account record for that particular customer. Then we'll be able to assign it to them. If not, then we'll be placing that into a geo queue, at which point from the queue they can pick up their own leads. Now, if the referral has not been picked up within 24 hours, right, then they basically are going to be allocating referral appropriately, considered using escalation rules, but that's not possible for leads. So instead, we'll have a scheduled flow which will notify the management via push notification to a public group, and that they will be able to allocate those leads manually as they see fit. Now, the event process was going to start with the event sales representatives. They're going to send an email to the customer with PDFs, and then they can follow up with a phone call. So they'll be doing this using a button click. Once they click a button on the account, auto-launched flow will send a lightning email template with a public link to the Salesforce file. And that's going to be a brochure. They will be then synchronizing that using Marketing Cloud, and they'll be tracking the opens of the email using Marketing Cloud. For making phone calls, we'll give them Service Cloud Voice, so they'll be able to actually use call prospects using Service Cloud Voice, and that's going to be logged on the actual account record. So there is a high turnover of ESR team and like to drive consistency. So we'll realize what is the guided selling process for them, and we'll implement that using the path component on opportunity as well as lead. And then when they're working with the customers to select appropriate banners, they need to be able to quickly limit to only show the banner options for a specific venue. And so we'll be using the price books based on the particular venue and product hierarchy as well. So that's basically going to give us a product option. So that will kind of group the products based by family and based by predefined logic. Now, the repeat customers, they're going to have image files from previous events. They want to use that as a starting point of the discussion. Okay, now the CAD system is going to be able to export that list of locations, which we will be then storing on the network drive as currently exists. So that's an existing integration that we're going to be keeping, and we'll be tracking that on a custom object. So those will be the image locations and image folders. So those are external objects in Salesforce so that they don't take up any space. Now, we're going to assume that the CAD system has an event ID, and so that will be retained. In this way, the event ID is already going to be assigned to a particular customer, so there will be an easy thing to track down, and that's how we'll know that the particular image is related to the particular customer. Okay, now we've got the two SAP systems. They've been around for a long time, and they would like to retain them. So, and at this point, they want to continue to leverage them. So we'll integrate them using the ESB, which will orchestrate, and an ETL as well. So I'll talk about that later. They do have a lot of duplicates, which is unfortunate, but that's why we have the data migration process. During that process, we'll be ingesting the SAPs, basically all the various CRM-related records and ERP records into the ETL, and we'll be deduping them using the customer IDs, which I assume are going to be existing on all of those records. And then we'll be transforming the data into a Salesforce schema and pushing them out to the respective environments as per the data migration plan. Now, all of the systems are going to have options in local currency and dollars. So the exchange rates are actually going to be stored in SAP, and they are updated monthly. We'll enable multi-currency with dated exchange rates, so there'll be advanced multi-currency, and that will actually show up setting a corporate currency to US dollars, but then user currency are going to be based on euro or any other currency that they choose. The dated exchange rates actually will be updated via the batch data sync integration between SAP and Salesforce. So that's a monthly batch job to sync the exchange rates via ETL, fairly lightweight process. And then they will set the actual monthly range. And so they'll be able to report on those changes and see, as well as forecast the opportunities going forward. The customers are required to put down the deposit. So once the order has been created, what the customers are going to do So once the order has been created, there will be a record trigger flow that will kick off. It will create an invoice with a payment request for the 20% of the order, which will be looking up to the order. So we've got the payment request over here and an invoice right over here. And so on the payment request, there will be a hosted page that will be available from the payment gateway that connects to the ERP. That's an existing system, existing integration. So the customer will pay via the hosted page, and the confirmation is going to be displayed on the screen. The customers can also save their credit card data and using that hosted page, which is going to be stored off platform, and they will not be able to, no other user will be able to access that in Salesforce. It's not even going to be stored on platform at all, so, and they don't have access to that system. Now, the Premier customers will be tracking their status as a checkbox on the account. We'll be also tracking how many invoices they have and the status of the invoice, which looks up to the account as well. So we'll have an Apex trigger, which is going to be rolling up the account of the invoices of a particular types, let's say unpaid. And then if they have way too many of those unpaid invoices, the record trigger flow will have a decision element to check if that's if there are too many invoices, and then basically, well, actually, I'm sorry, it's the opposite. If there are no unpaid invoices, then the 20% deposit will be waived. So during the order creation process, that record trigger flow will be able to check. Happy to talk about that later. Anyways, so we also have an integration over here with the sources Salesforce and target is SAP. The integration pattern is fire and forget. When the order is created, a record trigger flow will create an invoice, which will then publish a platform event to which ESB will subscribe using PubSub API, and it will call out to SAP with a payload of the order. SAP will then create the invoice, and it will call back into the ESB, and ESB will update that invoice in Salesforce. Now, only this event sales representatives can actually change the Premier status, which is that checkbox. We'll give them field level security permission via permset. And each CRM instance connects to SAP to submit orders. So we'll actually replicate that functionality with Salesforce, but the ESRs do not log into Salesforce directly. And so it is wonderful that we are able to consolidate all of the CRMs to Salesforce and retain this type of functionality. Again, this will be all integrated via ESB to orchestrate using the BAPI interface, which has already been proven as something that's actually working. So the appropriate SAP system will be notified of each closed deal. So that's another integration right over here. So upon the opportunity, closed one, record trigger flow will create an order using order line items and payment request. So from Salesforce, the pattern is going to be remote process communication, fire and forget. And so once the opportunity is closed, record trigger flow creates the order with the order line items and the payment request. And then the record trigger flow will publish a platform event just like before. And ASB will subscribe to that using PubSub API. It will fetch all of the information using Composite API and will call out to SAP with the payload. Then the SAP will receive such payload, will create the records, respond to the ESB with SAP ID. SAP will then update the order and opportunity with SAP external ID, which will be stored on the Salesforce record for future upserts. Now, the SAP sometimes does have the scheduled downtime, is anywhere from 1 to 3 days, and these outages are actually a problem. So the risk here are missed transactions. So in this case, what we'll do is once the system comes back online, ESB will replay the publish platform events, and once SAP comes back online, it'll be able to, ESB will be able to call out to SAP. It will poll the system, see if it's back online. It will basically call out to the to SAP and transmit that payload from Salesforce. Now, the system is going to be routing the closed deals to the print location associated with the venue. So we've got the record trigger flow that's going to assign the order to a print location, and that would be print location is right over here. That's assigned to the order, and it's going to be notifying the location manager via push. So that will be a system action within the record-to flow. Now the lookup is to the print location from venue. So venue basically gets all of the sprint jobs done by a particular print location, which is now, of course, associated to a particular order. Now, event sales representatives should not have access to other teams' data. In this case, we have a default OWD, which is private, but they want to be able to have access to the local team to help each other out. So again, these are internal users, so they can use opportunity teams, and they can be predefined opportunity teams to make things easier. So when an opportunity is created, the opportunity team can be added all in one fell swoop. Now the customer needs to be able to log into the system using the existing social media credentials, so LinkedIn, Google, and so on. So they'll be using social sign-on, in which we'll create authentication providers within the customer community. And forgive me, please, this says partner community over here, but we'll have another customer community in a mobile publisher, which will enable them to log in via social sign-on using OIDC flow. So that would be from the mobile device. From desktop, of course, mobile publisher does not apply. And all of these systems are actually already supported by Salesforce, LinkedIn, and Google. There's no problem with that requirement. Now, the print technicians are going to be overlaying the imagery onto the venue banner placeholders in the CAD system, right? But right now, there are no many details are not tracked in SAP and submitted by email. So once the image mappings are received, and we'll see that functionality coming up a bit, so it's out of order requirement. So once the image mappings are actually received from the client, then remote process invocation fire and forget integration will send an updated order info to SAP. So CAD system uses the network storage arrays in a hosted data center, and they have a huge capacity to accommodate expected 3-year growth. So we'll be retaining that network drive and that whole connection with CAD. And CAD will have, there will be private folders exposed by the web-based UI. The folders are unique, so we're going to assume that they will have the event IDs on them, so we'll be able to find them. And so the image folder is actually something that's going to be virtualized in Salesforce, as well as image locations from that file server and CAD. So we'll expose that UI via LWC in the customer community, so the customers can actually upload the image files, and they will go directly to those image folders, the image locations. Now, each customer has access to that private network folder where they can update, and currently they're missing some of the key information. So instead, we'll give them the opportunity to kind of link those images to the banner placeholders, which is something the technicians are going to be working on. And the technicians will then be able to see which image the customers would like to be using in which particular banner placeholder. And so that's tracked on this junction object of image mapping over here. So when the customer uploads the image to the CAD, it will be created in the CAD lookup to the image folder, and we'll be virtualizing that in Salesforce using external objects and Salesforce Connect. Image location will contain a link to the network drive, existing functionality, and the customer will then click on the image location record to create an image mapping, and that will be external lookup to banner placeholder, and then they'll enter the instructions right there on that particular Salesforce record. Now, when the technician has the right combination, they're going to be sending the order to the customer to sign electronically. We'll be storing those blueprint files on Venue itself, and then the button click, via button click and auto launch flow, the technicians will be able to invoke Formstack doc generation to create the PDF. You'll have the images in the tabular listings of related records, and they're going to show the preview of how that file is going to look. Then it'll advance to the e-signature, click on the button, and send that PDF to the customer to sign. And then when the customer signs that, the document is going to be stored on the order. Record trigger flow will be then checking on the payment request and transaction record and seeing that the payment transaction is successful and payment request has been satisfied, then they'll be able to activate the order, at which point another record trigger flow will kick off an approval process, and the record will remain logged after that. This same record trigger flow will then also create a print job and notify the fulfillment team, which will be actually a public group. Now, the banner printing process now, the process is going to automatically instruct the CAD system to fulfill the print job. So that'll be done using the remote process notification fire and forget integration pattern from Salesforce to CAD. We'll create a print job. Record trigger flow will publish a platform event to which ESB will subscribe. As before, call out to CAD and it'll send the payload. When CAD publishes the webhook event, this is something that already exists. So we're going to reuse that integration. And so the webhook event is going to be published to the ESB endpoint. ESB will update the status of the print job in Salesforce, tracking that on a print job record. Now, each print location has daily printing capacity. And so this is something that we'll be able to track on the print location. And the banners are going to be tracked on custom object, looking up to the print job, looking up to print location in turn. So this does show that we have 36.5 million banners. Actually, let me correct, that's 10 million banners that they print, but they're going to be doubling that in the next 3 years. That's definitely going to be LDV, and archiving strategy will be quite aggressive. While it's on platform, we'll be using skinny tables and very selective software queries to mitigate for short-term LDV. Apex job will then calculate the print velocity and it will update the order. And the shipment date is going to be stored on the print job itself. So just to make sure that they're able to meet that demand in time by agreed upon date, Apex Trader will update the print job completion percentage in the custom field, which will show on order using the formal field. So happy to disambiguate that a little bit later. They are a very time-sensitive business, right, because of the events. And so at this point, they want to make sure that there's a high uptime of the systems. So the risk here is breach of contract, and it's a business risk. So we'll be using a test-driven development. SLAs will be monitored by the PMO to run projects. And the DevOps is a strong DevOps process will ensure high quality of delivery. I'd like to also mention that Salesforce does not publish SLAs, but customers can check the historic trust-based published SLAs for the past 20-some years and decide if Salesforce is the right system for them. And I hope that it is. Now, the technician is going to be able to request the help from another print location. So in this case, they will have to publish a case if they're running behind against the print location, which is right over here. And the case assignment rule is going to assign the print location manager as the owner of that case. And so the technicians will then be able to have access to all orders, print jobs, cases, but only edit their own. So we'll give them a perm set with view all on orders, print jobs, and cases, but they'll be able to edit their own records. So the customers only need to have access to their own orders, print jobs, and issues. So that's going to be done using the sharing set on account contact relationship via the related contact. They will always be able to access their own account and contacts. So as long as they have access to the account using ACR, they'll be able to get access to orders, print jobs, and cases, as well as those will also be shared using the same method via a sharing set. Now, the venue operators also need to have access to print jobs for their venues. So we'll give them a sharing set on ACR, just very much the same, and the sharing set on orders, print jobs, and issues via the account, which are also going to be linked to venue as well. Technician managers are going to be reviewing the print jobs in danger of missing. So that's going to be a standard Salesforce report on print jobs, filtered on the status. The managers will subscribe to those reports and will be receiving those daily by email. That's standard functionality as requested, very easy to implement. Banner installation is going to happen like so. We'll be caching those various large images on large format phones and tablets. So I considered using a hybrid app for this, but now Mobile Publisher is actually able to use offline storage capabilities. So we'll implement that, and it will speed up time to market instead of creating a hybrid app. So the venue operators will then be managing their setup workload using reports of banners. So partner community instead of CC here will allow the reports on event, print jobs, and banners. So there'll be standard reports in Salesforce that will expose to the venue operators in the partner community. And they'll be beginning the setup of the event about a week before. And so in case there are any issues, they want to be able to reach their technician using various methods. So the techs will get the Service Cloud license. Venue operators will be able to open the case and use digital engagement, and as well as the technicians will be using digital engagement, to which omnichannel will actually digital engagement will be already included in Service Cloud. Anyways, they'll be able to make phone calls using Service Cloud voice, and when the venue operators call them, Service Cloud voice is used to get the calls routed to the correct technicians. They can use the Salesforce chat and Einstein chatbots to get them started to deflect some of the cases. Now, the issues are going to be managed primarily through email, which integrates with Outlook and Dynamics. Well, in this case, they want to standardize the support process, but not drop emails. So no problem there. We'll give them an Einstein Activity Capture licenses. 100 of them come free, but then we'll buy them in packs and integrate that natively with Outlook. But Dynamics at this point will be deprecated. So Einstein Activity Capture is something that will facilitate the communication with Outlook as well as Google Suite if necessary. Now, the issues here are very time sensitive, and they want to be able to provide certain SLAs, 1 hour response times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we will be then tracking those SLAs on entitlements, using milestone actions to make sure that the cases are responded to appropriately. And milestone action will then create a push notification if an SLA is missed. And so in that case, they'll be able to follow up with the customer. Usually if there's a collaboration needed, then case teams is something that we can use for the venue operator and customer, as well as the technician. Well, customer cannot be part of the case team, but the venue operators can be, as well as the technician. But for the customer, we'll give them ability to chatter on the particular record, and then they'll be able to track that case in the customer community. The CRM analytics is what we'll use for trending analysis on print location and case. And the partner sales reps are going to be able to view all customer issues. So we'll give them a view all permission on case using a perm set. There are 3 million cases that are considered relevant. So at this point, that's just a very large volume. No reason to keep that on platform. And so they want to be able to alter banner size, material, fasteners. Okay, so we'll be tracking those attributes on banners themselves, and we'll archive after this event to the data warehouse and report using CRMA data set. The cases are also can be logged against banners, and so that represents this relationship. The attributes themselves are tracked on banner, and so now on to all right. And in case there's a data that references original representatives. Okay, yes, this is the requirement where we need to be able to store what people were actually involved in this whole process. So we'll be creating this object over here called client team. And this is where we will actually store all kinds of interested parties. I considered using lookup fields, but I did not want to limit a case to only connect to only certain number of user records. Here we can have a related list, and we can archive those as well and report on them later. Okay, now on to the expansion activities. The PSRs want to prioritize the venue growth, and they want to be able to actually report on deal trends for the past 5 years. So we cannot use Salesforce reports for that trending reports. So instead, we'll use the CRMA dashboards, which will be exposed in the partner community. using the special license from CRMA, and those trends are going to be pulled from the data set, which will originally reside in in the CRMA data set. So we could store them on DW, but that will be overkill at this point. Now, PSRs also need to determine the next 5 strategic countries, and they'll be also using CRMA for that to run these reports and dashboards to figure out the trends. And that information will come from spreadsheets that they've purchased. They're CSV files. They'll just be uploaded directly to CRMA, and a data set will be created from there. Now, the expansion is fueled by acquisitions, and they do have a very diligent team, but it just takes a very long time to make any changes to the SAP ERP system, and they're backed up for 18 months. However, they are they produce very high quality and low defect work. So there is an integration risk, of course, and a risk to the timeline as well. So no matter how good the system is, if you cannot integrate with it in time, it's not as useful. So here, the mitigation will be using the scaled agile methodology to align the release calendars. We'll use the contract first approach to align on integration points, figure out what the system is capable of. But most importantly, we'll prioritize those activities. We'll involve the subject matter experts from SAP in the Center of Excellence, and the steering committee will first communicate those priorities so that expansion activities can be met. And of course, the PMO is going to be, again, using the SAFe methodology to manage projects. And so happy to answer questions on the various local Scrum teams and ceremonies and so on. Now, the existing SAP systems, they require frequent downtime. And so that's actually going to be projected to increase. They also want to make sure downtime cannot negatively impact acquisition strategy. So the risk here is timeline and business growth. The steering committee needs to be able to communicate those priorities, and the COE is going to be able to manage those priorities. So the fact that the downtime cannot negatively impact, we'll be using middleware to see if we can somehow mitigate that by replaying certain events and making sure that as soon as the system is back up, we can actually resend the payloads from Salesforce. Other than that, we'll see in the future if we can actually transfer some of that functionality into Salesforce to reduce the dependency on SAP. So they're also making bug fixes in production, which is a terrible practice. There's a lot of fixes that have been overwritten in subsequent deployments, and that caused a lot of frustration, lack of trust, which is understandable. And so they want to make sure that the systems keep pace with the demand. So the risk here is code quality, lack of source control, and production access. So at first, we'll disallow the devs to access production environments. So we'll instead use release managers. We'll implement GitHub for source control and Copado to orchestrate the DevOps pipeline. PMO will be using the scaled agile PI planning process to align and show progress as well as build trust. Jira, which will integrate nicely with Copado, will offer the traceability matrix capability. This is our proposed pipeline, where basically there will be a code merge environment to allow for shift left methodology to be able to resolve code merge conflicts as early as possible. Then integration testing will be done in the DevPro sandbox for SIT. Then moving on to the QA team is going to be working on partial copies because they'll have 10,000 records per object, and continue on to UAT also in a partial copy, which will then be replicated to a training environment, which off of a UAT is just a clone. At this point, once UAT passes, we'll back promote all of the various changes down the pipeline. And going from UAT to staging will simulate the actual real going to production. So once all the bug fixes have been worked out, going to production should be a very predictable and easy process. And if there's a hotfix that needs to be introduced, first it will go to staging and then to production, just to make sure there's an additional layer of smoke testing. All right. And so when we do migrate records, we're actually going to be doing the load testing, migration testing, and performance testing in the full copy sandbox. And we'll calculate how long that takes so that when it's time to go live, there will be also a predictable process. We can be also seeding the lower environments with test of records, either real records or synthetic records. And so that will come from ETL as well. And so this is why we're using partial copies over here. Now, the data warehouse represents the records that are historic reference, but are not needed for transactions within Salesforce. So we'll be offloading those to DW right as during this ETL transformation process. All right, at this point, I'm done and happy to move on to Q&A after a short break.